بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما واجعلنا من الذين يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا طيبا وعملا متقبلا وبعد. Inshallah, tonight we're going to go over some of the rulings that we did not get to discuss regarding fasting, the month of Ramadan in particular. And inshallah ta'ala, we're going to go over as many as we can of the masail, the various situational, different situations, and try to address them based on. And what we're doing here is we're doing comparative fiqh, inshallah ta'ala. Does anyone remember the definition of fasting? What did we say fasting was? Definition of sawm or siyam, fasting.
Stop eating from dawn to sunset.
طيب. Stop eating. But I can drink. Okay, drink. No, you have to be very precise. Your definition has to be precise and concise, right? What did we say was the most, precise or concise and concise? Huh? Abstaining from food, drink, and we can do that, or what we can do simply, we can say abstaining from anything that will invalidate the fast. Okay, and then we go into what may invalidate the fast, right? Because, contrary to, not contrary, but, some people think that only drinking, eating and drinking, but fasting actually can be invalidated by multiple things, right? One of which is the consumption of anything, right? Be it food, drink, or any solid object that may not be food or drink, but it could be pebbles, it could be a pill, right? May not be classified. So ingesting or consuming anything and allowing it to go into the belly. So it's to abstain from these things and also other actions such as sexual intercourse that will invalidate fasting. Intentional vomiting will invalidate fasting. For women, menstruation will break the fast as well, right? For someone to leave Islam, stop, to commit apostasy or to apostatize, that will also break the fast, or will invalidate fasting. And so a person should avoid anything that will invalidate fasting from, anything that will invalidate their fast from dawn until sunset. Right. Then we talked about when is fasting obligatory, when it's recommended, when it's prohibited, when it's discouraged, and we talked about that in detail, alhamdulillah. So now let's talk about the actual pillars of fasting. Right. Pillar number 1, to abstain from eating and drinking, and all other actions that will invalidate fast. That's pillar number 1. Pillar number 2, right? To maintain fasting from the beginning of the fast and until we are certain that sunset has taken place, right? So we have to make sure that sunset has taken place. Okay. So what happens in this case? What happens if you're eating and the time comes in? What happens if you're eating and time comes in? You must stop immediately, right? You must stop immediately. And if you have not swallowed something, you should spit it. Right? So you're eating, right? Or you're about to take something, and someone says the time came in. and you believed them, and you knew the time came in, you have to stop. Because there is this idea, and this is, by the way, according to all the 4 schools of fiqh. Because there is this idea that if you have lifted the cup and you're drinking, you might as well just finish. Right? And this is not necessarily the case. Okay? Like, what happens if the time of breaking your fast came in? Right? It's sunset. Now you're certain it's sunset. Should you break your fast immediately or should you wait? Like, the sunnah is to hasten breaking your fast and break your fast immediately. Right? And not delay. Delaying is actually from the practices of the people of innovation. It's one of the distinct, practices and actions of, sects, sectarian, practices. Ahlus Sunnah and the scholars of Ahlus Sunnah will always emphasize that when the time comes in, sunset took place, right? The minute sunset takes place, or when a trustworthy mu'adhin, a person who calls for adhan, a person who calls the adhan, when the adhan is made, you should break your fast. And obviously the recommendation is to break the fast with the Prophet ﷺ, what the Prophet ﷺ used to break his fast with. And the Prophet ﷺ used to break his fast, he used to love to break his fast with rutab. And we said rutab when we talked on Friday night about the prophetic diet. Rutab basically is when the date goes from being fresh into becoming dry, especially the ones that are half yellow, half ripe, half brown. So that was the Prophet ﷺ's favorite food to break his fast with. And the Prophet ﷺ used to take 3 of them. If he couldn't find rutab, then his second choice was tamr, which is dry dates, the dark ones, right? If he couldn't find dates, then the third option is water, plain water, right? This is the sunnah. Now, can you break your fast with anything? Yes, you can break your fast with anything. It doesn't have to be these items. If you can't find them, can you break your fast with milk? Yes. Can you break your fast with no. One thing people should avoid is breaking their fast with something that is either haram or makruh or controversial, such as smoking, cigarette. No. So, what if someone has to take a pill before they eat anything? Some of us, we have GI conditions, and it's recommended that we take something before we consume anything on an empty stomach. Then the person may start with that, and that will be considered what broke their fast, and then after that they can have their milk, their drink, their water, or their dates. Okay. What if you cannot find anything to break your fast with? Then the scholars said, some of the scholars said that then you should break your fast with your intention. So you should make the intention that your fast has come to an end at that moment so that you don't delay. And you should not say, I will keep fasting. I can push myself. I can go further till 10 o'clock, right? So if you can't find anything to break your fast with, they said, then break your fast with your intention, right? Okay. Then there are some contemporary masail that come in the process. When you are traveling, you have the option to break your fast, but if you keep your fast, when should you break your fast, especially if you're traveling by air? You're flying. Okay. I personally tell people, if you're going eastbound, right, and your journey began after you started your fast, In other words, because this is, by the way, something that people need to keep in mind. If you're traveling and your flight is at 11 a.m. or at noon, you can, during the month of Ramadan, you cannot say, well, since I'm traveling anyways, I'm not going to fast that day. You have to begin your day fasting. The flight could be canceled, right? You're not a traveler. You don't have permission to break your fast until your journey begins. Once your journey begins, then you can shorten your prayers or combine them, according to the schools of fiqh that allow that. And then you can break your fast as well. But up until that point, up until the moment your flight takes off, or you're on board your flight, right? You're not a traveler. Your flight can be canceled, right? You could be on the runway, and then you can be, and this happened to me, myself. We're on the runway, we're about to take off, mechanical problem, we go back to the gate, flight is canceled, right? So you should not break your fast. What I tell people is you should not break your fast until you're airborne. Once you're airborne, then you can break your fast. For those who start their day, they start their day, and I'm not saying this is sunnah or anything. All I'm saying is this is just, recommendation. For those who start their day fasting, and if their flight is somewhere in the middle of the day and they're going eastbound, right? Maghrib time is going to come in very relatively quicker, right? So in their case, right, if they can handle, they have the option to break their fast, but if they can handle and they want to basically maintain their fast, then that might be a better choice for them. For those traveling westbound, their day is going to get longer, right? And in their case, right, as soon as their journey begins, my recommendation, I'm saying it's recommended, it's better for them to break their fast. And I know cases of people who went against this advice, and they ended up actually fasting, not eating and drinking anything for about almost 23 hours, right? Because sunset. Because you don't break your fast based on the timing of your city of origin, right? Nor the timing of your destination, but rather where you're at that time. So if you're flying and in the middle of your flight, basically you see sunset, then time is up. You may break your fast, right? And if you're flying the opposite direction, or Fajr time comes in, then time begins, and so on. So just this is a mas'ala that needs to be discussed. Also, the scholars, contemporary scholars, discussed regions or areas where they have prolonged days, or they have sun for 6 months. It's not something that really pertains to us, so we're going to skip that, inshallah azza wa jal. Okay, now what are the conditions? Some of the masail that came up were, we said that in order for someone to be obligated to fast, they must be Muslim. So what if someone accepts Islam during the month of Ramadan? Right? Do they have to make up the days? Let's say they accepted Islam on the 10th. Whatever happened before the day they accepted Islam, right? They don't have to make up anything. Al-Islamu yajubbu ma qablah. Everything will be erased. From that day and onward, they must observe fasting. Okay. If they accepted Islam in the middle of the day, they must refrain from eating and drinking and keep their fast or abstain from eating and drinking until sunset and make up that day. All right. And then fast for the rest of the month. All right. I think this is very clear, right? This mas'ala. Okay. طيب. What if, and we also said, second condition for those who are obligated to fast is reaching the age of puberty, right? And if someone reaches that age in the middle of the month, then it becomes compulsory, it becomes obligatory upon them to fast the month of Ramadan. And however, the Prophet ﷺ teaches us to train our children, and I say this to the parents who have children, to train our children, not obligate them, but to encourage them and motivate them to get used to fasting as early as we can. And I must add also, with and after the recommendation of their pediatricians. Right? Because there may be some cases where, it may not be a good idea for them to actually fast. So it depends on their obviously health condition. So, and it's something that I encourage parents to discuss with the pediatrician of their children. And I've done this myself, and also with the child, because it's something that they need to do on their own. Right? Last thing you want to do is force them, and then them going, behind closed door or behind your back, and so that's not what you want to do. Motivate them, right? And encourage them, right? Even if they start with partial fasting, obviously it won't count as fasting, but half a day, and then 3/4 of a day, and then every other day, and so on, until they are able to fast the whole month on their own, inshallah ta'ala. The sooner they do it before they hit the age of puberty, the easier it will be for them. I know a lot of people who are not used to fasting, or who didn't care. Their parents didn't care about training them to fast. And when they became adults and responsible at the age of 15, 16, 17, fasting the month of Ramadan becomes a huge burden and a big struggle for them. Right? So, however, if a child, if a boy or a girl reach the age of puberty before, in the middle of the month of Ramadan, then they must observe fasting and, fulfill the days. The days that were before, the day that they missed, they're not obligated to make these days up. So again, the scholars said, as long as there is no harm on the child, the parent or the guardian should encourage the child, and this is pretty much the opinion of the Hanafi, Shafi'i, and Hanbali school of fiqh, and it is also an opinion within the Maliki school of fiqh that children should be trained, and it's encouraged and it's highly desirable for them to start fasting before they reach the age of puberty. Okay. So the third condition for fasting to be obligatory is sanity, right? And we're going to skip the issues or the masail that are related to sanities, right? So as long as a person has, is of sound state of mind, that person has to fast. But I must say, what about someone who has reached an age where they have some memory loss, or they have some they're impaired mentally, they're not fully there? Now, if they're physically, for like elderly people, if they're physically not capable of fasting, then khalas, their mental state won't be an issue anyways. But if they're physically capable, but they're mentally, right, they're mentally not capable, then obviously they're exempt from fasting. But what if they are in between? Right? This, in my opinion, requires the assessment of a mental health professional, right? Preferably a Muslim mental health professional who will determine whether this person has the full mental capacity to observe fasting or not, right? And based on that assessment, then that person will be either recommended to fast or not fast. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Allah knows best. Okay. There are some masail related to women and fasting, and inshallah we're going to hold a special session for the sisters only, inshallah, to cover this. It gets complicated every year. We get questions about about women related issues within the month of Ramadan. Okay. Niyyah, very important. When it comes to the fasting of the month of Ramadan, your niyyah, your intention must be kept and made. You must determine and you must decide and make your intention that you're going to fast the next day before dawn, right? And this becomes very critical on the first day. After the first day, we know that it's Ramadan. On the first day, when people are trying to figure out whether tomorrow is Ramadan or not, it's important for people to stay up or to wake up early before Fajr to find out whether, right, the moon, the crescent was sighted and whether the community is going to start fasting or not. So it is the obligation of everyone to stay tuned and to keep in touch with the local authority or the local community leadership to know whether Ramadan is going to begin the next day or not. Obviously, in many communities, right, they have already made that announcement. In many communities, the leadership of these communities made their calculations and already made the announcement, and they determined the beginning of the month of Ramadan, which has been determined in many communities here in North America as the 2nd of April. In other communities, some of us, we actually wait until there is a confirmed sighting of the crescent and then we begin, right? So keep that in mind, because keeping your intention from the night before is very important. And it's actually a condition according to the Malikiyya, Shafi'iyya, and Hanabila, right? Do you have to renew your intention every day? Obviously, it's in your heart and it's in your mind, right? There are differences of opinions on that you should make your intention every night. That's the opinion of the Ahnaf, Shafi'iyya, and Hanabila, right? Others said that in the beginning, your intention in the beginning of the month of Ramadan, that you're going to fast every day in this month, and you waking up for suhoor, all of that is an indication that you have the intention of fasting the next day, so you don't have to it becomes really a matter of semantics, in my opinion. It's Wallahu ta'ala alam. Okay. I think we're going to stop right here. We're pretty much done. One more thing. There are certain opinions or statements that I may have said in the past, not here in this community, but in the past, it may be online. In the past, and I myself, use inhalers. In the past, I have mentioned that the use of inhalers does not break your fast. I no longer hold that opinion. As I said, I am myself, I'm a user I use inhalers, for asthma. So if someone needs to use inhalers while they're fasting, then in my opinion, that is a medical condition that basically gives them the option or the right to break their fast. But that day has to be made up. Inhalers, in my opinion, and the opinion of many scholars that I respect and follow, right, does break fast. It does break fast. The least that can be said about it is it's highly controversial, right? It's most likely it does. There's that shubha, there's that doubt that it could break your fast. So if one has to intentionally use inhalers, right, then I say they must make up that day and treat it as a sick day. Others will say to you, it's better for them to make it up. It doesn't hurt, right? For them to make it up. So Wallahu ta'ala a'lam, inhalers do break one's fast. Yes, it's a small portion, it's a small amount, but it is rather something that actually we ingest or inhale, and it goes into into the cavity, right? Wallahu ta'ala alam. Does anyone have any question? Yes.
Is it better for traveling usually? Even you can top it up, but is it better to fast or break it? Which one is?
Is it better to, if you're traveling, is it better to fast or to break your fast?
So I heard more different opinion about the opposite of the rukhsa, and it's better because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it easier. You take rukhsa and then you make it that way. I think that's a better practice. I heard hadith or whatever, and Allah يحب أن تأخذ الرخصة.
إن الله يحب أن تؤتى رخصه كما يحب أن تؤتى عزائمه. نعم. صحيح. Yeah, I think it's really up to the individual. You know, whatever you feel at that moment is best for you, do it. But don't overburden yourself. If you think that pushing yourself, right, or going through a hardship is better, then that's a flawed thinking. That's a flawed thinking process. Right? That kind of cognitive process that, oh, the harder the better, so I'm going to make it harder, or when it's harder, I'm going to do it. No. Do whatever is easier. So what I tell people, if you were to ask my opinion, do whatever is easier for you. When the Prophet ﷺ was given, and my evidence for that is, ما خير رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بين أمرين إلا اختار أيسرهما. Whenever the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم was given two options, he would always choose the easier, so long it's permissible. So that's why I gave that scenario. That's why I said if your journey begins in the middle of the day and you're traveling eastbound and you feel like keeping your fast is easier, by all means, do that. Right? That's, in my opinion, that's better. And if you're traveling westbound, obviously, keeping your fast is going to become harder. Then in that case, break your fast and take the concession and the hadith, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ أَن تُؤْتَى رُخَصُهُ كَمَا يُحِبُّ أَن تُؤْتَى عَزَائِمُهُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves for His servants to consider and to take advantage of any concessions that they are given, as much as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves for them to take matters of their religion seriously when there is no room for concession. No. Majid, you had a question? Okay. Any questions? Any questions? طيب. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.